everyone, I'm Christopher Epling. This is the art workshop here on Pike TV. So we want to explain a little bit about what's been going on and what's happening and why we're recording the intro for this particular show in this location. So as of the recording of this episode, which may air further down the road and hopefully things will be different when it does, but the COVID-19 pandemic is in full effect. We're having to shoot in my shop because of the precautions and the restrictions that the governor's placed on the state. So this is why we're here. We're shooting from my shop an episode, and we may do this a few times while this is going on. So I hope you will bear with us. Also, it's been a little bit since we've recorded a new show. There's been a lot of changes that happen, personal changes. We have my wife and I gave birth to our beautiful little daughter, Kieran. So she's been growing up. She's going on 8 months old now, and she's a handful. Plus, with work and family and everything going on, we've just took a little bit of a sabbatical. But we're happy to be back. It's a little weird being back under these circumstances with what's going on in society, but we're going to push on and drive on regardless, because art is still art, and it's important for you too to know that these skills that you learn here on the art workshop are skills that you can take and then create something on your own. Especially if you're a student right now during these circumstances where you're at home, you're still taking classes, going to school, but you want something that's a little bit more outside of games and books and video games or whatever. But this is it, art. So if you enjoy art, I really hope you like this episode. Now, in this episode, we're going to be returning to my favorite medium, a medium that I know a lot of you enjoy. It's ink, just basic ink. Now, here's a bottle of Sumi ink. It's not a brand. That's actually what it's called. So you can buy Sumi ink in all different types of brands. This is a big jar of ink. Now, ink comes in all sorts of different ways. You can find these little tiny canisters, these little tubes of it with a dripper on it. You can get it already inserted inside of a casing and an ink pen too. You don't have to worry about messing with any of that stuff. But ink is a very cool medium. When used, you can do a lot of different stuff. There's different techniques that you use. It so parallels pencil and graphite drawing because you're making lines. So, of course, pencil lines are going to mimic pens. But the difference is with ink is that you can get really deep shadows. Now, here's a really good example of some line art. So this is a page that I've worked on for author Dwight Schuler. And it's his graphic novel, Prison School. If you look at this just from where you're seeing, you see there's a lot of light lines. There's not a lot of heavy shadows. That's one method of using ink, is that you can show a very well-lit area without a lot of dark shadows. And you compare that now to this one that's sort of right in the middle. This is another page from Dwight Schuler's graphic novel. So you can see here how ink is used with a technique called cross-hatching to bring in shadows. So compared to the first page, this has a little more depth in it, a little more darkness and shadows from the inks. And then the last example I have for you is from Bruce Parsons' Mockingbirds. This has a lot of shadows. So you can see how this has been used to show the backdrop of this character, and then even to showcase the characters below, where you have the ink sort of being a backdrop again. So ink is a real powerful medium. It's really fun to use. And in today's episode, we're going to be drawing a landscape version of a certain type of a setting, a dilapidated building. Those are really great opportunity in those types of examples, because you have different textures of stone, wood, glass, garbage. You also have shadows, so a building could be losing its facing, and then the light coming in on one floor, and below it another floor you can see inside of it much darker. So we're going to be drawing a portion of a dilapidated building in today's episode. You don't need a lot to really do this. All you need is an ink pen, a pencil, a piece of paper, and an eraser. You're set. You don't need any fancy tools or anything like that. So I know it's not as exciting as maybe drawing Captain Underpants, but see how fun, though, drawing a dilapidated building can be just with using pencil, ink, and paper. It's really cool once you get into it. You'll learn a lot of techniques today, too. Cross-hatching, drop shadows, pull lighting. You're going to also be learning a little bit about perspective, because we have to draw it before we can ink it. So thank you for tuning in. On behalf of Pike TV, I'm really happy you did. And let's go ahead and get started with today's episode. All right, let's begin in today's episode. So I have just a general piece of paper here. This is drawing paper. It's got a little bit of a thickness to it because we're working with ink, even though that's not really considered a wet medium. It is a wet medium. But unlike other things that just first come to mind with paint and other things like that. So the first thing we want to do, when we're drawing a dilapidated building, I use a pencil. This is a giant mechanical pencil. This is, if you have a regular pencil at home, that's great. Don't worry about so much of the materials right now. Is what we're doing. So the great thing about a dilapidated building is that you don't really have to follow a lot of the laws of architecture, because things are falling apart. Now I have a certain range here that I can draw in, so my paper starts about here and it ends about up here. So we have 2 markings, so that's what we're going to work with. And I try to go ahead for the camera purposes and draw where my boundaries are, so I know pretty much in here this is where I can draw. So starting out, I want to start at the bottom down here. What I'm going to do is start to just sketch out some sort of a structure. It doesn't have to be anything too, and just draw some rectangles and draw some horizontal lines, some vertical lines with some angles to them. Okay, now what this is we're building the structure of this dilapidated home. So it's going to come out to here, and it's going to go back and up. So here's a corner, and you can draw this along with me. Just sketch it out very lightly. It does not have to be anything too technical or getting into the the real nuts and bolts of perspective and all that stuff. This is just having fun. This is just throwing some graphite on the paper and sketching it out. Now this is a dilapidated home. We have some openings. Now what we're going to do is, after we pencil out our structure, we're going to go back over this, and this is where the ink comes in. The reason though that I went ahead and wanted to draw this in pencil first is that you always have to have something that gives you an idea of where things are on your page. So the pencil lines are meant to guide you. Okay, now up here we have a larger part of the home. Now I'm going to have to probably bring my roof up a little bit so you can see it on your end, because the camera does cut off about there. So we do have a hatch roof that goes back down this way, all the way down like this, and then up again. Now the roof, pretty much, if you just follow that line at the top, you'll have your roof. Now we do have one small portion of the house that's going to be here. So we have I forgot exactly what these are called, but they're those structures that you'd see a lot on homes that were built back in the day. We have a side door here. Now as you can see, the structure of this house looks pretty solid right now. It doesn't look like it's falling apart too bad. But what we're going to start to do now is actually add into it some rubble. So I'm going to draw these ovals and shapes that look kind of like rock. And the doors are going to be all open, which gives the sense of there being vacant. It's not used. It's not secure. It's not safe, maybe even, to be in, that sort of thing. So I'm drawing a lot of these pebbles, and we'll do some grass structures so that it's things have overgrown. Nature has started to take over. Let's draw some horizontal, vertical lines to represent boards laying around. There'll be some boards up against the house, maybe like this. Have fun with this stuff. This is really where you get to really experiment with what's happening. Now here we got 2 windows. This is a sort of a section that comes off the house here, small roof here. So as you can see over here, there's a door, and then there's a door here. So you have 3 doors, 1, 2, 3. So this goes into the side of this same structure, but there's this kind of like a fence that's been torn down. So we'll draw some lines coming up like this to represent like a fence that's could have been torn down. Maybe it wraps around here a little bit and it's sticking out here. A couple pieces. What we want it to do is we want to show that this place is not used or even safe to be in. Now this is a window that's been completely broken out. Here we may have half a window that's been broken out. This one we'll leave on there. We may even put some rubble on the rooftop, even some boards. Maybe a board is sticking off this way. Some of the shingles have fallen off. So see what we're doing here? We're really throwing a lot of these lines down, little shapes that don't really mean anything. You're not following any rules. You're not using a ruler. So that's a really good point of drawing a dilapidated building, is you're not using a ruler.
Now the hatch roof is more seen in European style homes. You also have a little window like this up here at the attic. European homes, Dutch homes, those sort of things, they have a lot of structures that sort of extend off of the home itself. So that's why you see this little kind of a building here that connects to the side, and then you have this offshoot building. This could be a washroom, this could be a canning room for canning vegetables and things. I mean, who knows? But this is an older home. That's the point we want to get at. And so now we can go ahead and jump into the inking. Now when I start to draw, when I start to ink this, I want you to remember that you do not need any of the, these tools that I'm using are tools that I have available to me. I also have, regular Sharpies and ink pens even, so you could use that. The one I'm using is just a thicker brush. I always talk about what I'm using though, for those who are really interested in supplies and those sorts of things. This is a number 3 wedge graphic pencil, a pen, sorry. This is one that is a Pigma. So what I do is I start off with this first, and I want some real solid lines to start popping out here. We're going to have some straight lines, but not a whole lot. And what I like to do is just to go in with the real thick brush or pen first and start to throw in some shadows inside of the building itself. That's one of my favorite parts of it, so that's what I'm doing now. I will draw some shadows with this one. So there are shadows. So this roof is sort of bent out a little bit here, so you can sort of make it look a little bent. This side of the house here, the shadow does drop down here as well, where the roof hangs over. We have a deeper shadow here. We have a deeper shadow over here, even where this roof hangs over, like this. So you can go ahead and start to put some detail in here where the doors are, maybe to represent a few things hanging off of it. We got some straight lines. We got these boards here. Now notice what I'm doing is I'm laying down first this really dark series of lines. We'll go back in a minute though, however, and I will go and start to put in some smaller lines even. I'm going to go ahead and put a few of the foliage, the grass that's grown up, and then I'll use the side of the wedge to represent the fence line that's been torn down here. And I may add some more rocks as we go. Now you can put shadow underneath the rocks, as I'm doing here, sort of making up for more of the space, because you want to fill up a lot of the space. Now I'm just going to start putting the smaller lines. Use a thin tip pen if you have it for things such as your lines that make up the sides of the building. The wedge, or if you use a thicker marker or pen, that's more going to be reserved for whenever you go in here and start to put in these really dark shapes. So keep that in mind. Now here, this window has been completely broken out, so we're going to use the side of the wedge and really push down and get that in there. This window, some shadow up here, and then we also want to go ahead and draw in where this has been broken out. So you can see now how much that architecture, if you were to draw this home, if it was brand new, built, finished building today, and you go in and you sit down and you start to draw it, you're not going to have all of this liberty to draw in a lot of these broken down pieces of wood and rocks and trees growing up and things. You'd have to really try to pay attention if you're drawing it as a new home. You'd have to really pay attention to those really nice right angles and things like that. But since this is a dilapidated home, we can really go in here and make some real weird lines, because this place is broken down, right? So let's go ahead and move this up here, so we have some more darkness coming off of the roof up here, off to the side. This window, of course, is going to be broken out. I'm not really sure why I thought that drawing a dilapidated building would be fun. I think it's fun. So there's this big word that's used, and it's called dystopian. And what dystopian really means is that, in the future, new structures become dilapidated and break down. And people are really interested in seeing these structures, especially in Detroit. There's entire websites dedicated to dilapidated building structures and vacant vacant structures and things of that nature. Now I went a little heavy with these lines at first. This kind of looks like a dilapidated building. But now what I'm going to do is go in and grab a number 1 graphic pen, and this is a kind of a smaller tip on it. The reason I want this one is this is where I'm actually going to go in now and add some more detail. You can do these smaller lines with this pen, and you can see how it sort of starts to fill up the structure a little more. And then adding these pieces of planked wood. We'll go back and add more shadow as we go. This pen is really good for doing straight lines, and as I've been saying, though, straight lines is not something that we want to keep a lot of in this structure. We want to show that it's been broken down. And I like to show different types of materials. I like to show different types of tools that you can use for drawing. That's something that I was always interested in when I watched certain art shows growing up. I wanted so bad for the artist to tell me, well, what are you using? What are you using to get that effect? Such as the brush pen. So the brush pen is exactly what it sounds like. It's a brush. And this pen has a variety of lines. So you can really do like some really nice thin lines like we were doing with the number 1 graphic pen a minute ago, or you can sort of push down a little harder and off the side of it and get some of these real deep shadows. And those shadows, when it comes to dilapidated buildings, are important. One of the things that give these structures such a mystique of being dangerous, even if you look at it, is the dark shadows and things of that nature. You really want to be able to show the different types of distress that's been placed on a building, right? So those sorts of things. And your variety of pens that you have, you don't necessarily need all these pens, but if you have them, it's really cool because you can get those effects. You can get those dark shadows, and you can get the the structure to start looking like it's really falling apart. Now here we can add some stuff on the side of the building, maybe where we're really not sure what's happened here, but there's some sort of damage that's occurred. The planks or the siding has fallen off or been pulled off or damaged or burnt, or we really don't know. All we know is that this place, I guess, broke another window out. So all we know is this place has really just been through it. It's set maybe for a very long time, and now it's falling apart. So these lines, of course, that I've drawn here follow the lines that you've created for the main shape of the building. So these lines, of course, will go parallel to this line. Now up in here we can start putting a little more detail on this hatch roof. We're going to have some shadow on this roof. It's not going to be all shadow, and we do have some pieces of debris that's hanging on this roof. So if you want to go in and just put a little bit of shadow in there, that'd be great. And up here as well at the top of the house, we would show maybe turn the pen to the side. If you don't have this type of pen, you can you may have to make more lines. You may have to go over it more, but you can show some distress to the building just by adding a few deeper, darker shapes in the shadows like that. All right, let's go back over here and finish up our little. This is what I imagine. I pulled this picture of a home off the internet, and what I'm imagining this little thing here to be, I think this is probably a doghouse maybe, or some sort of I don't know. You probably used it for like putting certain types of produce in, maybe, or canned vegetables or something like that. I don't know. But that was on the house, so I included it. Now you see how I'm using the siding, and I'm going with these lines that are straight here. Now, the roof, of course, isn't straight. It's actually slanted, but of course you wouldn't follow the lines up here. You wouldn't have these lines going this way. You want those to follow the same lines of the siding of this house, and the same goes for over here too. So you want this to be somewhat similar to the rest, and I'm putting the brush on the side just a little bit to get that effect of it being a little bit hazy. And you can get the same effect with your pen or Sharpie, or maybe you have a set of drawing pens. If you do, then you can get the effect of this pretty easy. If you don't, you still can get the effect. It's a little more challenging, but you'd have to basically just really draw more, like continually go over it. Now here's where this whole siding part that we've been talking about really starts to counteract, because we're going to be going down this way. And what happens here with perspective is these lines will actually start to bend a little bit like this. So it goes sort of like that and then follows the line down. Okay, a little bit of the same theory with these lines. This is the side of the house here, and it would probably follow the same rules as these lines, but not as drastic as you can see. Same as this one. So this is the side of the house. So there we go. Now our building is starting, or our home is starting to look a little bit more dilapidated. We're going to continue to work with it a little bit more and see what we can do. Now basically with this episode, I wanted you to be able to see how pen and ink is used to bring out effects and emotion even with certain drawings. You could use pen to draw cartoon characters, or you could use a pen to draw monsters, or you could use a pen to draw a landscape, a beautiful landscape with a waterfall and those sorts of things. Or you can use it to draw something, it's a little bit scary, even a little bit. This could be, if this was October, people would probably be saying, well, this is perfect for Halloween, right? But there's buildings and structures like this all over the place. You can find them anywhere you go. Just look around. And pen and ink really pulls that effect out nicely because of the contrast between black and white. Once you have that contrast going on, you can really start to pull some emotions out and feelings out of a certain drawing. So it doesn't always have to be, something sweet and happy. If you draw realistic, then you're going to also draw things like this. Now what I'm doing now is going back over very roughly, just adding some more depth into these sidings here. I'm trying to make certain effects where the shadows would be. So of course the shadows are going to be dropping down here. Shadows is going to be here because our light source, I imagine, is coming in from this angle like that. So this part of the home, a lot of the part of the home actually, even down this way, is going to be deep in shadow. So I'm going to add some more lines going this way with my pen and continue up this way as well. The roof itself, the main roof at the top, is going to be solid black. This pen here that I'm using, which is a Pentel brush pen, is perfect for making certain lines, but one of the things you notice maybe as I've been drawing, if I stretch this out long enough, it starts to fade. See how that starts to fade out like that? See these holes in the line? That's not something that I really want to keep in a drawing. So what I may do is exchange this for another type of brush pen. And if you have an ink pen, like I said, you get the same effects as this. All you'd have to do with the ink pen though is you have to continually go over it a little more, keep on adding that material in there, and you eventually will get the same effects from it. It's going to take a little longer, but you can do it. It's very doable. There's more shadows over here, maybe where this is all laying on the ground. And for that roof though up there I was talking about, I'm going to jump in here in a second, go back to that, and I'm going to really try to bring out some darkness up here at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put this pen up. I'm going to grab another type of brush pen. This is Kuretake pen. It's the same thing. It holds a little more ink in the lines. And watch what I'm doing here is I'm going down. I'm keeping a white line to separate the darkness from the top of the roof and the siding. So I'm keeping this white line. It sort of goes away right here, which is fine. But I don't want to make this solid black. I want to actually make it pretty much solid black, but I want to keep a few white lines in there, so it gives the effect, hopefully, of there being some sort of hatched roof, shingles maybe even some other material that someone has used to roof this house a long time ago. And you could even probably draw a section where there isn't any. That's why we have so much of the debris on the ground. And so there we go. We got the hatched roof now. Now as I go in with this brush pen some more, you could continually add certain types of lines here to represent vegetation growth, more rocks even, that sort of thing. But as you notice with this exercise, we did it very roughly. We basically jumped in, sketched out in pencil, and then went back over it with this ink pen, very rough, drawing a very rough, dilapidated home. We didn't use a ruler. All the effects that came out of this came from literally using your pen and graphite. So I hope you participated, joined along with me today, and drew something with me. I would love to see it. If you do, remember you can send it to us, and we will share it on our show at piketv99@gmail.com. And always remember, as I've said in the past a lot, put your name on your work, so when you send it in, we'll know who did it. Include some information about yourself too, maybe your name, how old you are, if you go to school, where you go to school. If you don't want to share that, that's okay too. Thanks for viewing today. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode, working with pen and ink, drawing a dilapidated home. Until next time, I'm Christopher Epling, and keep drawing.